All right. So I figured I would go live today just to do kind of an election recap. And, one of the things that I think everybody's been so taken aback with is how intense the actions have been taken with Trump. And he's just signed a flurry of executive orders. And of course, many people are upset about it. Most people I talk to are very happy about it. So, and I can tell you from where we were heading, like I said, we were the plane heading towards the ground at Mach 2 with no landing gear. And it appears like it's pulling up right now. One of the reasons I wanted to do this, and I have to keep this short this morning because it's a recap and I got appointments, but I wanted to be timely and get it in. And Ella can't attend this morning only because she's having some really difficult transits. And I just said, hey, drop off, because she's got a Neptune ascending transit going right over her. And trust me, every client I've ever seen that's had a Neptune ascending transit going right over them, they're in the twilight zone. And she's also got Mars with it. So she'll be back. But right now I said, hey, take a break, relax, and, get the Windex out and wipe the fog off your windshield. So anyways, back to the thing I wanted to talk about. And I'm going to share the screen here a little bit because this is some interesting stuff that I want to talk about. So give me a minute here. I got to always go through the process of sharing the screen. So one of the processes that's really powerful here, I'll put this on the screen right now. And one more thing I'm going to do here real briefly. Let me just do this. I want to get my cursor up so I can actually put things around. And you'll see here in just a second, everything gets kooky for a minute. And I'm going to stop that. And I'm going to do another, what we call screen share, so I can get my cursor up. This is what I'm doing here. So, all righty. So this allows me to annotate. So back to where we were, this is the chart of Trump's inauguration. And why I'm redoing this is because he was actually signed in at 12:02 p.m. It was a couple of minutes late. It's supposed to happen right at noon. Now, this has been a time-honored tradition of presidents to be signed in inaugurations in January 20th in of course, Washington, D.C. at 12 noon. Well, I went back through history. And one of the things that I'm doing this recap for is, remember I had mentioned the Sun-Pluto conjunction. Now, this is what I want to drive home. Do you know that it takes 248 to 250 years for Pluto to go around the solar system, or you could say a birth chart in a country? Well, the most important thing here is I went back through every single solitary inauguration. Of course, there's 47 of them, right? So it wasn't that hard to do. Not a single president in the history of the United States of America has ever been signed in on a Sun-Pluto conjunction. Now, somebody might say, okay, so what? That can't happen again for another 250 years if we continue to keep the inauguration dates on January 20th. This isn't huge. It's over the top huge. It's absolutely stunning. And I got to tell you, the only other president who was inaugurated with a hard aspect that was really hard between Sun and Pluto was President Lincoln. And we know, and his second inauguration was the Sun-Pluto opposition. The first one wasn't. And you might say, okay, well, what does that mean? Well, it's interesting. The Sun-Pluto opposition was in orb of influence when Lincoln got inaugurated the first time. But the second time was within 1 degree of orb. And you might say, okay, well, what does that mean? Well, we know what happened. He got shot right afterwards, his second inauguration. He was in office for a very short amount of time. I forget the historical details, but it was really a short amount of time that he had been in office, and he was killed. Now, Trump is coming in with the Sun-Pluto conjunction. Talk about transformation and power. You're seeing things and witnessing things that this country has probably never seen since its inception. And Marco Rubio, as we speak, is sitting down in Panama right now. Now, I know the Panama government's saying, oh, you're not going to take it back and blah, blah, blah. And China's not running the place. Wait and see what happens. Also, we just had Trump on the World Economic Forum or whatever it is today. He was speaking on this. It's all over the news, and he was I can talk. Reiterating I'm not talking too good here. I need more coffee today. But he was going over the fact that Mexico and Canada could end up becoming a state. Now that sounds so far-fetched to everybody, and like, how could this happen, right? But when you look at the money, and this is what I talked about last podcast, when you look at the money, follow the money, and that's where the power lies. And again, we've heard the expressions, money is the root of all evil. Well, it certainly seems to be the essences of power in this modern mechanistic society. You show me who controls the money, and like Rothschild said, I don't care who makes the laws. So that's why I wanted to do this podcast, because it is really significant that he was signed in. And again, going back to every single inauguration, not a single president has been signed in on a Sun-Pluto conjunction. And the reason why, see, Washington was actually signed in April 30th of 1789. And all of us are familiar with this, 1776 date in our heads because that's a Declaration of Independence. But really, the first president of the United States was not signed in until 1779, which was George Washington, obviously. And that's a whole story that someone can read on Wikipedia. That's quite interesting. Apparently, Washington actually needed funds to get to Washington itself. Actually, it wasn't Washington. It was the New York Federal Hall is where he was inaugurated at. So the Capitol at that point, I think, didn't exist. The historians can quote me on that because I'm sticking with astrology here. But the bottom line is, and this is my emphasis, is no president has been signed in on a Sun-Pluto conjunction except Donald Trump. You talk about a significant transformation of America. And I've mentioned this before. Stuart Swirtle also mentioned it as well. And that is, psychics are seeing the same thing, that we could see a unification of the United States with the whole North American alliance, which sounds far-fetched. But let me tell you, this astrology chart actually shows that. If there was ever going to be massive transformation, it's happening. And guess what? What have we witnessed? It's only been 3 days. It's absolutely amazing, So what we're seeing here is going to be stunning. It's absolutely stunning. And the chart mirrors that. One other thing I want to talk about, the fires here in California, a lot of people have been very concerned about it, and the winds are really up today. And it's interesting that we have a Mercury-Mars opposition, which is literally going to be over within a few hours. And the weatherman said the same thing. Well, the wind should start dying down, the intensity of them in the next few hours. And they're working really hard to get everything under control. We're located probably about 35, 40 miles south of where this is happening, really bad up in Castaic Lake. People in San Diego are still dealing with it. And the fire today was actually right on the 405 hillside, but they're getting it under control. So this is really huge. Another thing I want to just mention real quick is people have been talking about this big alignment on the 25th that's coming up with like 6 or 7 planets. It's actually not as tight as you could say, and I'll tell you why. The biggest issue is, let me see if I can find this here. If you take your hand, it's really quite an interesting thing. I don't know if I can find it here, but there is a little video file. If you take your pinky finger and hold it up to the sky between planets, when you see them, it's about 1 degree. If you take your 3 middle fingers like this and hold it, that's going to be approximately 5 degrees. If you take a whole fist and line it up between planets, extending your arm out, it's approximately 10 degrees. So what these people are talking about, the alignment's certainly there, but it's just not that close. But it is significant. And I think it also mirrors the transformation we're seeing at this time. The main thing is the inauguration chart. That's why I wanted to do this real brief recap. We've also got Jupiter going direct on February 4th. And Jupiter is always the expansion and optimism. And I would say that it's going to be interesting to see where the Ukraine war ends up in the negotiations with Putin. One of the things I will commend Donald Trump on today, and I think he's going to be recognized as a humanitarian eventually, though some people will never like Donald Trump. That's just the way it is. They're programmed to hate him. I should say the Mind Control News has done a very, very good job. So have all our talk show hosts and everything else, the propaganda machine. But I will say this, Donald Trump said something very significant at the forum today, and that was, people are dying. He wasn't differentiating between Ukrainians or Russians or anyone else. He was saying the only thing on the battlefield that are so flat because there's no mountains there is human bodies stopping bullets. And, he's talking about young people on both sides of the fence are getting slaughtered, as well as innocent civilians. And I mean, you look at war, you look at the bombs when they go off today, especially the ones today, they are exceedingly powerful. And he wants to stop the war to stop the carnage. So, again, I'm not here to hold any torches, but I would say people ought to realize he's not Hitler, And the other thing I want to comment on is people were saying Elon Musk was doing the Hitler thing. Well, I don't know about that. I don't see Elon Musk as Hitler, at least not based on his chart. And I would say that he was probably just going from his heart out. What I wanted to say was I did this podcast because this chart shows it is more transformational than any president that's ever been signed in. And one of the things I just said a minute ago was Trump just did another amendment on the 14th amendment, which was quite profound because LBJ, Lyndon B. Johnson, had apparently put in something that was very racist, that actually put racism to have an influence on the 14th Amendment. And now he has canceled that, meaning Trump, he's canceled it just, I think, yesterday. So this is exceedingly powerful and quite amazing because what it's doing is it's really taking anyone of any race, any creed, any religion now cannot be judged. So, excuse me, very profound, very profound. And again, the reason I did this podcast is I've never seen in the history of the United States a Sun-Pluto conjunction with a president being sworn in. And the only one who had a very hard aspect was Lincoln in his second inauguration. Actually was in orb in his first inauguration, but really tightly in orb within 1 degree on Lincoln's second inauguration, which he got shot right afterwards. So this is profound stuff. I don't know if I mentioned earlier that Jupiter's going direct on February 4th. I think this is going to have a big impact on what happens with Ukraine. And I'll repeat, just in case it was muted, that Ukraine, again, Trump was mentioning in the forum today that he was attending on the news that, people are getting killed. There's no mountains there and bullets fly and people are getting slaughtered on both sides. And he didn't differentiate between Russia or Ukraine. He said young people. And that's who fight these wars, is young people for the most part. The commanders are a little bit older, right? But it's like George Carlin said, war is when old men in business suits send young people off to war for their business interests. Not that there isn't some just wars, but for the most part, a lot of wars are created by the bankers and the business people over various different things. And so some are just, but a lot aren't. And so this one, not going to get into all that, but I think with Jupiter going direct here on February 4th, quite good. Also, we got Mars going direct at the end of February, which is a big deal. So we're going to see a lot of turmoil, but yet I also think we're going to see a lot of very positive action. So I got to keep this really short. I apologize about the technical difficulties today. We've had power outages and a lot of weird stuff here, but we're okay with the fires. And again, they're north of us. And I just want to reiterate how powerful this chart is. And I don't know if I was muted before, but even Tom Homan said, these sanctuary cities resisting everything are going to end up with exactly what they don't want: more agents in removing these people. So again, they're not being Hitler. They're removing people that, basically are here illegally. They can come in. In fact, they want people in, but legally. I can't go move to some other country illegally or crash the border. They'll remove me as well. So, this is a lot of common sense that's coming up. And I had mentioned too, I think before when the mic was muted, that there was a major thing put out in another executive order by Trump. Here again, Sun Pluto conjunction, transformation like we've never seen before, that the social media companies have to give us our First Amendment right of freedom of speech. And, I've been curtailed a lot on this channel because I don't want to say anything, because if I tiptoe on eggshells, I'll get hate mail from a lot of people. But most importantly, you'll get canceled by YouTube or any other platform you're on. Well, we're seeing transformation to America like we have never, ever, ever seen before. And again, I always tell people, go get a copy of the Constitution. And I'll tell you another really good book. Let me see if I can find it here. It actually is the Bill of Rights. This one is really an amazing book because it has the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, and many other writings in it. And you can pick these things up for next to nothing. So really good. We're all Americans. And I got to say, hats off to the founding fathers. They created a real torch for true freedom. And we've had the politicians bending it back and forth. And I really think that Trump, whether you like him or hate him, my opinion is, based on the astrology, he is absolutely going to make transformations to this country like we've never seen before. And I'll repeat, just in case the mic was muted, this whole thing with Canada, Mexico, Greenland, and Panama, don't write it off. It could really happen. Rubio, like I said earlier, is on he's down in Panama right now negotiating, and they can deny, China's not running it. China has been secretly infiltrating Canada, the Panama, and so many other countries. They're in Cuba. They're all over the place. So they've been gnawing away like a Pac-Man. So really powerful, powerful stuff. So, all right. Someday we'll get all the technical difficulties worked out. I'm working on that right now. But anyways, I want to terminate here because I got a really tight schedule today. But sorry about the technical difficulties, and we are good to go here. So we'll put up another podcast soon. Bye now.